feminist women.
Mulheres feministas.
زنان فمینیست.
Vaniu Vachikonzero Chevakadzi.
نساء.
Mujeres feministas.
Yam femini. Femactivism.
Nari Mukti.
Matapang na babae. Kekchimae ka ishk.
Welcome to KPFA Radio's Women's Magazine, the only entirely feminist show on KPFA. I'm Lisa Dettmer, and I'm your host today. June is, of course, Pride Month, and so today I thought we would look at several local Pride events and people to honor the lesbians and queer women feminists of my community. I feel it is especially important to support my LGBTQIA community now, who are one of the first ones to be attacked in times of fascism, along with other communities like the immigrant and poor communities. And when many parts of our community is being so viciously defunded and attacked, and in the case of transgender people being criminalized and denied health care, it's important to be able to support and celebrate our various institutions. So today I talked to Allegra Madsen, the director of San Francisco Frameline, which hosts the San Francisco International LGBTQI Plus Film Festival, which is the largest and longest-running LGBTQI film festival in the world. And we will look at some lesbian-centered and feminist films that I wanted to recommend to people. We will talk to the director of two of the documentaries I recommend, Sasha Waters, who directed the new, really moving film Mary Oliver, Saved by the Beauty of the World, about the beloved lesbian poet. Then we will talk to Cheri Gaulke, director of the new documentary Acting Like Women, which explores the feminist activist performance artists of the 1970s and 80s in L.A. And then we will talk to two of the lesbian feminists behind the incredible San Francisco-based Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project, or QWOCMAP. We will talk to QWOCMAP's managing director, thru, and Executive Artistic Director Madeline Lim, who will tell us about QWOCMAP and their upcoming film festival, which runs from June 12th to June 14th and is being held at the San Francisco Presidio Theater, and which is entirely free, which is part of their organization's commitment to being accessible to everyone. QWOCMAP isn't just a film festival, but is, as it says on their website, represents film as a movement, and they incorporate their feminist politics in all aspects of their film festival, their film production trainings, and their content. So you really want to stay tuned for that. And finally, we will talk to Judith Masser about lesbian feminist disability justice activist and therapist Jill Lessing, who died just last month at the age of 83. We will remember Jill's many contributions to the lesbian and feminist community, making disability access and justice a mainstay of the LGBTQIA community and beyond. So stick around for all of that. Well, welcome everyone to KPFA Radio's Women's Magazine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah. Thank you, Cheri, Sasha, and Allegra for joining us on Women's Magazine. Allegra, you are the director of San Francisco Frameline. And
I am indeed.
The San Francisco International LGBTQ Plus Film Festival is hosted by Frameline and was founded in 1977 and is the longest running, largest, and most widely recognized queer film exhibition in the world. And this year marks 50 years of Frameline.
I like to call us the mother of all queer film festivals. But yes, we have had 50 iterations and we are still very much going strong. It's really exciting.
Yeah, and the films run from June 17th through June 27th, and they're shown in both San Francisco and the East Bay, which I'm very thankful for. And over 60,000 people attend the San Francisco Frameline Film Festival each year. So congratulations, Frameline, and thank you, Allegra, for being part of a really important outlet for the LGBTQIA community, supporting our films for the last 50 years. Films that wouldn't have had an audience in mainstream media. And this film festival is even more important now when the voices of queers and the funding of queers is under attack again, which is not new, but is even worse than it was under Reagan. But for those who still don't know about San Francisco Frameline, can you tell our audience a bit more about San Francisco Frameline, Allegra?
Lisa, I think you did kind of a bang up job talking about our public facing exhibition part of Frameline. But what I think a lot of people don't realize is that we function year round to support the entire life cycle of queer film and are an active participant in the queer film ecosystem. We have programs that support the completion of queer films. We have to make sure that these things are made. Then our exhibition, which is the festival, makes sure that queer films are seen and have an audience, and those two populations meet, the queer filmmaker and the audience. And it's a platform for queer filmmakers to meet each other, which I think then goes on to make sure that more queer films are made. And then we have our distribution program, which makes sure that queer films stay out in the world. And we have a restoration program to make sure they don't go away. So I'm trying to build the entire life cycle of queer film and how we can make sure that it's just an active part of our cultural conversation, no matter what.
And you all have some amazing films each year. I'm really always impressed. And thankfully, quite a few documentaries are being made about second wave feminism while we're still around. And many of those feminists were lesbians, like filmmaker Barbara Hammer. And there is an excellent documentary about Barbara Hammer in this year's Frameline Film Festival. One of those documentaries about 70s feminists is the boldly feminist film Acting Like Women, which is directed by our guest Cheri Gaulke, and which is executive produced by Lily Tomlin and her partner Jane Wagner. Thank you for joining us, Cheri.
I'm so delighted to be here.
Well, Acting Like Women, I really love that film. It really explores the activist performance art of feminist artists in the 1970s Los Angeles area and at the LA Women's Building, which was such an important part of that scene. And it shows how these feminist performance artists really radically challenge the deeply entrenched sexism of the art world. Before we talk to Cheri, let's hear the trailer from that film.
As a woman artist, there weren't a lot of opportunities in the 70s. The museums didn't show work by women artists.
They had nothing to lose because they weren't going to be included in the gallery system anyway.
Where were we? We weren't seen at all.
That's why we were building our own movement.
I'm Cheri Gaulke, and I'm a performance artist.
In performance art, I could make art with my own body and from my own experience. It was a brand new art form.
The performance being done in Los Angeles is what set the template around the world.
The Women's Building was a part of all of it.
The Women's Building.
The Women's Building. The Women's Building is a public center for women's culture.
What I realized was if I was going to achieve what I set out to achieve, I had to build a context that would also allow other women to do the same thing.
That was the beginning of the Women's Building.
It was a place that attracted a wide range of women.
We were building a room of our own.
I had to come here immediately.
Feminist performance art really flourished.
The scene just exploded.
We tackled
issues of gender,
money, power, race, class.
It had been one of the most important places in 20th century art history.
And then, of course, it fascinated me that it was completely erased and suppressed as if it had never happened.
What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Shit happened.
we changed the role of women artists. We could have never done it without our community. That community is still with me today. I mean, it's who I've been interviewing on this couch.
I'm awfully pleased that I had any part at all in the Women's Building. But I just love your story. I want to make a script about you.
You know, we had fun. We had great fun.
That was a trailer of the feminist documentary Acting Like Women. Cheri Gaulke, you not only directed Acting Like Women, but you're in the film because you were a part of this really important art scene, this feminist art scene. And you start the documentary so brilliantly, depicting media that showed how gender roles were so restrictive and sexist and rigidly enforced in the 70s, which I think people forget. You point out in the film that as women, we learn those harmful roles through media and the society generally, and that women are taught how to pose or perform as a woman. So right away, you are pointing out that gender roles are all socially enforced and created performances, which is so important even today to point out in these post-feminist times where hyperfemininity and objectification is rampant and normalized in the media. And then you immediately follow this by visually demonstrating this in one of your past performance art pieces where you filmed men walking around in high heels, red high heels.
Yes.
So they can experience how uncomfortable and difficult it is. That was so brilliant.
And I make them walk in nature.
Yes,
in muddy streams and sand dunes and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Great warning. Can you talk about your documentary and the importance of the activist feminist art performance movement that you note in your film has been erased, as have all the various past lesbian and feminist movements? And these two documentaries, I hope, will really be a part of that, rediscovering and challenging the myths about second wave feminism, and talk about how you came to make this film about this really important time in our history.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible moment in my life when I came to the Women's Building in 1975 as a 21-year-old art student from the Midwest, a preacher's daughter. And I came to LA and immersed myself in this amazing community of women artists. And it was a time, we were kind of coming out of the 50s, that was sort of the era we were coming out of when women's roles were very limited. But the art world in the 70s was a very different place than the art world today. I'm not saying the art world is perfect by any means. There's still a lot of misogyny and racism and all that stuff, but it was a time when literally there were no women artists. There were no women artists in our textbooks, in our art history classes, literally none. And women artists were not being seen in the galleries and museums. And we were so frustrated because there were so many of us and we were so creative. And we came together, and it was a sort of confluence of this new art form called performance art that was just brand new. And what was so exciting about it was that it didn't have those traditions of painting and sculpture that were dominated by men. It was this art form that we as women could kind of step right into because, in a way we'd been prepped for it in this way in which we'd been taught to act like women, to pose, to perform. And so we could use it for our own means. And what we did is we said, screw the art world. We're going to make work that's different, and we're going to make work that's about things that we care about and that are important to our lives. So a lot of that work was about violence against women, but it was also about wages and racism and classism and all kinds of things. And we're going to bring it directly to audiences. So we were really redefining the role of art in society, that art could be something, as one of my great mentors, Arlene Raven, the founder of the Lesbian Art Project and one of the founders of the Women's Building, said, feminist art raises consciousness, invites dialogue, and transforms culture. And that became our goal with our work. And making this film was important to me personally, but also important to get this movement that we did into the art historical canon, because we've been written out of that history. There have always been women artists, there have always been gay artists, and we need to record our stories and present them to the public.
Right. And I would argue that Hollywood films today are just as sexist and mostly made by men as they were. They're just different. And as you point out in your film, Acting Like Women, the concept of women as an oppressed class was completely foreign and was often ridiculed in the 70s by most men and also many men on the left. You note in your documentary that in 1972, it was still legal to beat your wife, and rape was never mentioned, much less prosecuted. So feminist concepts seemed entirely new, even though there had been a feminist first wave in the early 1900s, which was also erased from the cultural imagination. And as you said, similarly, performance art was a new concept. As one of the women in your film says, it was a real alternative to the academy, which was all in your head and still is. What was the importance of performance art to the feminist movement, and what was the importance of lesbians in performance art as well?
Of course, talk about invisible. I mean, lesbians were very invisible. I mean, it was a very closeted kind of world back then. And, at the Woman's Building, it was a place where many women gathered, and they were not all lesbians, but lesbians finally had a place where they could create exhibitions to show work by lesbians, to begin to talk about what is a woman's sensibility in art, but what is a lesbian sensibility? What does it mean when you begin sharing that experience and making it public? I was not a lesbian when I came there, but I became one. I discovered that aspect of myself, through this supportive environment, was able to eventually come out as a teacher and support LGBTQ kids at my school. And by the way, a very early film that I made is called Out Loud, and it's Frameline distributes it. It could have been one of the first films ever made with LGBTQ teens. That was really wonderful and important to me. And one of the performances we did back then was called An Oral History of Lesbianism. And that was one of the first performances that began to look at what was lesbian experience.
The whole film was really beautiful. You had so much archival footage, which I guess is only possible because you were all performance artists recording things and saving things. And that is so important. And I think that this film will just contribute to that even more. You talk at one point in the film that some of those films were going to be thrown out when the women's building was closed, partly because of the defunding by Reagan of the NEA, which is what's happening again. And you also point out that feminist performance artists were much more collaborative than the traditional notion of a solo suffering male artist.
Yes.
Which I remember as the paradigm that was presented in college. And that was epitomized in the Women's Building, which provided a space for so many women artists to flourish. Can you talk about that in the building, which was defunded by Reagan, not unlike Trump, and how women worked collaboratively?
Yeah, I mean, that was very unusual at the time in the art world. I mean, literally, the art world is very much organized around selling art. So there's this notion of the solo artist. So to collaborate was, not something that felt very marketable. And performance art, of course, in and of itself was not very marketable because there were no objects being made. It was this ephemeral art form. So that was a challenge in making this film, is kind of gathering those archival materials, which in some ways were few and far between, and we had to sort of build on what we had. But collaboration, yeah, there were a number of collaborative groups that came out of the Woman's Building, each with different themes. So there was a group called the Waitresses that performed in restaurants. And it appeared to be like a guerrilla performance, like the waitresses are revolting and taking over this restaurant, and these women burst in their waitress uniforms and perform things like Wonder Waitress, who rescues the harassed woman, and the goddess Diana, the multi-breasted waitress costume.
Yeah.
And that celebrates the nurturing of women that is not celebrated in our culture. Another group, Sisters of Survival, which I was a part of, is an anti-nuclear performance group that we wore nuns' habits in the spectrum of the rainbow and went to Western Europe and did anti-nuclear performances. And there was Ariadne, a social art network, and they did performances about violence against women. So, at a time when it was very risky to be doing the work that we were doing and scary, it was just scary to be speaking out. And we were really pushing the envelope. To be in a collaborative group gave you that kind of support that you needed to be strong. And we could see the strength in each other and encourage each other and be there to hold each other up in doing this challenging work.
Yeah. And I really hope young people, women, queers, activists see this film because it's so inspiring. I mean, I remember the work we did in ACT UP, which was very performative. We thought we were inventing it. I really appreciate you making this film?
So yes, the woman's building came under fire. I personally came under fire. My name was appearing in articles. I found out I was being investigated by the government at Jesse Helms' request, and it was triggered by a performance I did in New York called Virgin, which was about trying to get pregnant without a man. And then I was saying, hey, it's not unlike the Virgin Mary. She didn't have sex with a guy. She got that sperm, that semen in there, some other way. And that's what we were exploring as lesbians, how to have a baby. It does feel very much like what's going on now with the cutting of the funding. And at one point, we even lost funding for the film that had been promised to us. It was later reinstated, thank goodness. But when Trump first cut the National Endowment for the Humanities funds, that affected our California Humanities grant.
Yeah, well, thank you for making this really important documentary. And as I said, I really hope young people get to see this. It's really inspiring and important roadmap and important to remember. And that film is showing on June 21st at the BAM PFA over here in Berkeley at 3:30. And you will be talking there, Cheri Gaulke, and I will be there to see it again and hear you talk. And I recommend everyone get a ticket to this documentary at frameline.org. It's really, really excellent. And another touching and inspiring film showing at Frameline this month that I highly recommend people see is the new documentary about the very well-known lesbian poet, Mary Oliver, which I see is almost sold out, and it's at Rush. But people should still really try to see this. They can get a ticket. The documentary is called Mary Oliver, Saved by the Beauty of the World, and it is directed by our other guest, Sasha Waters. Thank you for being with us, Sasha.
Thank you, Lisa. And Cheri, I have to say, I am dying to see your film. I hope it's widely available to the world. I hope I can stream it on Canopy for my students. So I'm really excited.
And Sasha, you have a very long and illustrious career as a professor of film and a filmmaker of over 20 experimental and documentary films. And many of your films have an anti-colonial and feminist lens. You've worked with film icons like Barbara Kopel and Ang Lee, and your film is really amazing. And how did you come to make a film about Mary Oliver, a poet who is loved by so many, but who is also so private and not someone who seeks to be part of any feminist movement or to be an activist per se?
Yes, this is true. I wish we had a longer, larger palette because Mary's life is so rich and complex, and we could have made a 4-hour film or a 6-hour film about her. But one of the things we try to trace in the film is her lifelong, I would say, resistance to being identified with any group, whether it's an identity group like being queer, being a lesbian, or any kind of like political affiliation. I mean, I think she is politically liberal, that's sort of clear, and she's obviously very interested in nature, but she never really liked being called an environmentalist per se. But that changes in the last 15 to 20 years of her life. I mean, she's quite resistant throughout, but she does start to see that the world is changing and that voices are needed. And I think that's one of the things we were struggling with and looking at. It's one of the reasons I think she became less private in the last 15 years of her life.
Yeah, totally. And some people have criticized her for not dealing with the dark side and maybe not being an activist, but you show in the film that she did mention being sexually abused by her father as a child, but it wasn't until she was 70. It felt like her poems were a solace for that pain and a way to transform that pain. What do you think?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, she didn't even really recognize it herself until she was in her 40s, until she went back to Ohio. Her father died, I think, about 10 years before her mother, and she spent time back in Ohio when he was ill, and then after that. And that was when she was really starting to come to grips and come to a kind of adult awareness of the kind of trauma and suffering that she had endured, really understanding it through that adult lens. And this was a question in the film because some of the poems from that period in the 80s, I mean, we used the one called A Visitor, but there are others. I mean, there's a poem called Rage, which is really just pure rage, and others as well that she's clearly grappling with that emotional and spiritual landscape within her. And I think we weren't sure like where that belonged in the film, because it was happening at this particular time in her life and it shows up in the work in the 1980s, but she doesn't start talking about it until she's much older. And I think it is this, again, this question of the public versus private where Mary Oliver's concerned, where she's a very private person. And I think Lindsay Whalen, her biographer, says in the film, sometimes today we might confuse privacy with shame, right? A younger generation might think about privacy. Well, we shouldn't be private about anything, because if you're private, it means maybe you're ashamed of it. But Mary was never ashamed of her life and her choices, her lifelong partnership with Molly, the choices she made afterwards, but she was private. And so I think that making a public statement was at a point in her life where she realized it might help someone else to hear that. And it did. I mean, you could see in her fan mail how many people shared their own stories of grief and trauma with her, that she really touched people and made them feel less alone.
Right. That was another thing that I learned in the film, how beloved Mary Oliver was. And even though she didn't claim to be an activist later in life, she did speak about her fears about the environmental crisis. And as you said, she was always out about her longtime lover, Molly, in her poems and in life. And that's pretty amazing at that time.
Yes. And when she won the Pulitzer Prize, I think that in the 80s, she brought Molly to the ceremony and also with the National Book Award, which was a few years later. And she thanked her and referred to her as her partner. So she was always out in that sense.
Right. Your documentary provides various people reading some of Oliver's many touching poems. Her poetry touched so many, and she raised so many people's spirits, including mine. It feels very Buddhist, and as a Buddhist, it was incorporated in many of my teachers' teachings. The line, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life," it's just beautiful. And I love in the poetry when it's pointed out that poetry for Oliver was just about paying attention, which is a Buddhist concept. Do you think she was a Buddhist?
That's so funny that you say that, Lisa, because I've known Mary Oliver's work. I think I first discovered her through the Garrison Keillor, the Writer's Almanac. Many, many years ago when we would hear these poems every day on NPR. But I also rediscovered her because when I moved to Virginia, I became a Unitarian Universalist, and she's often used in the liturgy in Unitarianism. And because her publisher for many years was Beacon Press, lots of Unitarian Universalists claim her as one of our own as well. So I think the Buddhists claim her, the Unitarians claim her. She did not really have a religious affiliation. She did join a church for some time. I think that it was a Protestant church there in Provincetown. And there was a period of time after Molly's death where she became more interested in conventional Christianity, for lack of a better term, I would say. But she didn't identify with any one particular group, which I kind of really appreciate in the end, because I think it makes her more available to all of us. But for sure, so many of the things she writes, she talks about the stars. I'm going to butcher the quote. I'm sure, the stars in the sky and the mud at our feet are one, and we're a family, and that kind of holistic approach to the cosmos and including humanity in that, I think is very Buddhist.
Yeah. Well, your film is beautiful, as beautiful as her poetry, really, which captures what it means to be human and is so inspiring and real. I was deeply touched by how many people were touched by her, including John Waters, even though he pointed out that Mary Oliver so smoked up a storm. Thank you, Sasha Waters, for joining us on KPFA Radio's Women's Magazine. And if you want to see the new documentary about Mary Oliver, it is only available at Rush at both showings on June 23rd at 5 p.m. at the Roxy Theater and June 26th at 7 p.m. at BAM PFA.
I'm going to jump in to say it's coming back in July, courtesy of Kino Lorber. So it will be in San Francisco for a week-long run starting on July 10th.
Great. Okay. Thank you both. And if you're just tuning in, this is Women's Magazine on KPFA Radio, and I'm your host, Lisa Dettmer, and I'm joined by Allegra Madsen from the San Francisco Frameline. And Allegra, can we talk about another one of my favorite films that I looked at, which is the films about experimental lesbian filmmaker Barbara Hammer?
I would love to.
This documentary, aptly called Barbara Forever, really helped me to appreciate Barbara's films more because, you know, since they're experimental, they're not always easy for people who have been trained into wanting a mainstream Hollywood narrative to enjoy or understand. But in this documentary, I really learned so much about her. And I knew that Barbara was one of the first filmmakers to show naked lesbian bodies in a non-exploitative and sensual manner, but I didn't realize that had cost her a lot of recognition because the straight male avant-garde experimental film world was both sexist and lesbophobic. So it really makes me happy that Barbara eventually got the recognition by the art world when she was still alive, which she so deserved, and that this film will help us remember and appreciate her work.
I think there's still a lot more work to be done to have her even more widely recognized in the canon. It's true that her work was very experimental and it might not have the narrative hooks that we are used to, but I think she approached her work very much as a queer woman and trying to create her own sort of queer lesbian visual language. And I so appreciate the just the constant productivity and the constant experimentation to try to develop this visual language for lesbian culture.
And the Barbara Hammer film is showing June 25th at 8:45 at the Castro Theater. So really get tickets for that. Then there's the Brittany Griner story, which tells the story of the 6'9" black lesbian basketball player who was locked up in Russian jail for 295 days, which made major headlines here, and also a backlash by the growing right wing that objected to Biden bargaining for her release when another U.S. prisoner who was a white male Marine was not released. And that film is showing June 20th at 5:45 at the Castro Theater. And following along the same line is Give Me the Ball, a documentary about sport legend and feminist icon trailblazer Billie Jean King. That's June 27th at 5:30 p.m. at the Castro Theater as well. And then there's the film Fire Within about the progressive, multiracial, and queer-friendly Glide Church, which is showing at the Roxy Theater on June 22nd at 2 p.m. I highly recommend all those films. Allegra, is there any other film you want to highlight or say about Frameline that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I would love to highlight Anti-Diva, the Carol Pope Confessions. This is a really great documentary about the musician Carol Pope. She was a legend in the Canadian punk and new wave scene, and she combined a lot of seemingly disparate musical genres and really exploded with her band Rough Trade and later on as a solo artist. And it's just an amazing piece of music history.
Yeah. And you have Katie Lang in that film and the Peaches. And
Yep.
I really want to see that film for sure. I highly recommend that. And that's June 25th at 6:45 at the Roxy Theater. Before we go, any last words for people about the Frameline Film Festival?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of films were at Rush. As we get closer, I am finagling, and if you keep an eye out on our socials and email, we will be releasing more tickets shortly.
Great. And I really recommend people go see all the films that we've talked about. And I know there's many others that are really good. You always have so many amazing selections at Frameline. And I really appreciate that you guys are still around, especially given all the cuts that have been made to funding for queer and other groups. So I really appreciate it, Allegra, of all the hard work you do every year, and that Frameline is still in existence.
We're thriving, and it's really due to our community. And so I really want to thank you for always supporting us. There was a brief moment where everybody was like, "Oh, maybe we don't need queer spaces anymore," but clearly we have learned that lesson.
Yes, thank you. That was an interview with Allegra Madsen of San Francisco Frameline and Cheri Gaulke, director of the new feminist documentary Acting Like Women. And we were also joined by Sasha Waters, director of the new documentary Mary Oliver, Saved by the Beauty of the World. You can find more information and get tickets for any of these films and many more at frameline.org. And if you're just tuning in, I am Lisa Dettmer, and you're listening to KPFA Radio's feminist public affairs show, Women's Magazine. Up next, we talk to the directors of the San Francisco-based Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project, or QWOCMAP. We will be joined by QWOCMAP Managing Director thru and Executive Artistic Director Madeline Lim to talk about their upcoming film festival, which runs from June 12th to June 14th at the San Francisco Presidio Theater. Welcome, Madeline and Kibo, for joining us on KPFA Radio's Women's Magazine. I'm really, really happy to have you here because QWOCMAP is even more important now than ever, that Hollywood's romance with DEI is over, especially for queers of color. And in the mainstream world, queer is too often seen, even in queer communities, just as an identity versus a community, a culture, and a politics. But your organization incorporates politics in it from the ground up, and I really appreciate that. And we can see that commitment in you making it completely accessible, including making it free, offering online screenings, childcare, being wheelchair accessible, and providing a free shuttle to San Francisco from Oakland and back. And that's not all of the accessibility provided. And in addition, the representation of the rainbow of queers of color, I think, is unmatched anywhere in the world. Well, definitely in the U.S., but maybe in the world. But your politics is also obvious in the passion, love, and commitment to this cause you two have for QWOCMAP for 22 years. And you succeeded in being here again this year after the cuts in funding as part of Trump and his minions' attacks on the LGBTQIA communities, especially those who are also part of the immigrant, trans, and BIPOC communities. And I also appreciate the community engagement you incorporate as part of the film festival and collaboration with community organizations, as you say, breaking the isolation by creating discussions. And this is just part of what you all do, which is amazing. You all are really creating disability justice, abolition, feminism, and solidarity economies, as you say on your website. So just to say, you two are my heroes. And I really, really want to encourage people to go to this festival and to support QWOCMAP. But for those who still live in darkness and somehow may not know about QWOCMAP Film Festival, please let people know about this year's film festival in San Francisco and the other showings you have.
Hi, Lisa. Delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having us again. And thank you so much for your, very kind words about the work that we do. And yes, we are very excited to be celebrating our 22nd QWOCMAP Film Festival on June 12th to the 14th. And I am super excited about our 7 screening programs. Like you said, it really folds in movement building, community, celebration, particularly in this moment. Our opening night screening, just like last year, is our Queer Black screening. It's a celebration of Queer Juneteenth. We wanted to have that celebration at our film festival where folks can come, be queer and Black, at both, and see films that celebrate that. So that's our opening night. We're very excited about that. And then on Saturday, that's Friday opening night. On Saturday evening is our typical romantic, sexy screening in the evening. It's the only screening that is not family friendly because it's sexually explicit. So there's that piece for, folks who want to come out and have some fun. And then Sunday, I'm really excited about because this year we have a family screening. It's called Queer Families Belong on Sunday, June 14th at 12 p.m. And it's a whole series of shorts that take us on this journey from trying to start a family. And the last film that it ends with is really this portrait of a Pakistani American family, father and mother, and they're navigating faith and love of family. And it's very moving, very touching, a really strong, beautiful film. And then it's followed by our festival reception in the plaza outdoors at the Presidio Theater. And then we have our Litany for Survival screening, which is a 31-year-old documentary about Audre Lorde, her life and her work. And it's been recently remastered and restored. So we're very excited to be screening that. And then we're closing with our Queer Asian Spirit, which is an all queer Asian American Pacific Islander screening. So we're very excited about those offerings. Kibo.
Thank you for your intro, because I think the politics it's the combination of art and politics that QWOCMAP really understands, has always been a part of movements, especially of folks of color. And so I think showing a litany for survival, which I saw as a younger queer person, because I remember when Michelle was going around raising money for the film, something just really important about understanding our artists as thinkers and understanding like a queer Black feminist thought, right? And practice. And so a lot of what we try to do with QWOCMAP is what's the kind of world that we want to live in? Jewel Gomez, actually it was Audre Lorde who encouraged her to publish the Gilda Stories as a novel. And Jewel Gomez says, you know, you have to be able to imagine a better world to get to a better world. Right. And so this is one of those times where we get to watch films that look at the issues that are definitely very much on our minds all the time. And we get to think about what types of world we want. And that's also what we try to do with the level of accessibility that we have. And it's something we're always trying to improve and make better so that everyone can enjoy a film festival with films from around the world, but also be able to see, yes, actually, you know, we should have access for those of us who are disabled, right? Including immunocompromised folks. So making sure that we're masking. We really do need to be able to have audio description and open captions and all of these kinds of things that disability has really shown us that we all need and benefit from. So we're experimenting with the world that we want within the space of the film festival. And that's really important to us in terms of moving forward. And also, I think in times like these, like it's an incredible, you know, if folks don't have moments of despair, it's surprising, right? Because so much is manufactured to make us despair. So this gives us a chance to kind of reclaim that fighting spirit, but also a hopeful spirit, and say, you know, as as is the theme of this year, is like we resist and we roll. Like we resist, we roll camera, we resist, we roll our wheelchairs, and you know, I'm in a scooter, we resist and we keep moving, right? And I think the late great Patty Byrne of Sins Invalid said, you know, you can cry and organize. You can cry while you're organizing, right? You can do both, and sometimes we need to do both.
Thank you. That's really great. And I, as someone who's also disabled, I really appreciate that you have online showings. I noticed all the other film festivals are no longer doing that. They ditched that as soon as possible after COVID. So it's really frustrating. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about those satellite showings and the encore showings, so people know about those. And then also how they get in touch with you and get tickets.
Okay, well, the first thing you want to do is go to QWOCMAP.org, and that's Q as in quince, W as in watermelon, O as in orange, C as in cantaloupe, M as in mango, A as in apple, and P as in persimmon or plum.
And what is it? And tell people what it stands for.
It stands for Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project, also known as QWOCMAP. And you'll be able to find information there. Of course, all the details about the film festival and the satellite screenings, as well as the online encore. So something we started last year in partnership with the Chinese Culture Center and also SF Black Pride was offering satellite screenings of the film festival. So the main body of our film festival is in June, but offering satellite screenings, like let's say in Chinatown in San Francisco, and then this year at the Oakland Asian Cultural Center with API Cultural Center in Oakland was amazing, right? So going to places where our communities are and basically getting films out into the world. So we're doing that again this year. We're hoping to expand into Atlanta and other cities in the future, but it's a chance for folks to get to see like, what is this film festival? What is it being in community where it's not just art for art's sake, right? The combination of art and politics. So we have those screenings basically for May and I think through November this year. We're still working out some details. on one of the screenings, which is our Indigiqueer Steward screening, which has a really amazing film called The Cree Approach, another film about Dene folks in Two-Spirit folks in Alaska, basically reclaiming our traditions, right? Pre-colonial traditions and how those have been changed over the years and how important it is for us. And I think it really makes that connection between queers and trans folks and our traditional cultures, but also us and our environments. And so there's a few films that also touch on environmental issues, including Standing Tree, which is about an Afro-Colombian trans woman and her kind of journey through music. Then one of the things that happened, like with the advent of the pandemic, we had actually planned already to do a few things online. And that was really important for a screening in 2020. We wanted to make sure that it was accessible to folks. So we knew we would have some folks indoors, some folks in other locations. And so that sort of bridging of community was really important to us. So we did our film festival completely online for 2 years. But when we came back in person, of course, with all of our COVID precautions in place, we didn't want to miss that piece of accessibility for folks, not just in the Bay, but also around the world. And one of the reasons that we offer the screening in the fall is it gives us a chance to put open captions on all the filmmaker Q&As and make sure that we have the ASL interpretation that we need so that folks everywhere can enjoy all of the films and all of the screenings and, of course, the conversations with filmmakers.
So
Thank
to
you.
register for any of these screenings, whether it's our online encore screening, which is taking place September 11th to the 21st, that's the entire 3-day film festival, all 7 screening programs that's included in our online encore screening. Just go to our website at qwocmap.org/festival. And then just click on, you'll see registration for in-person film festival or the online encore or the satellite screening, and you can click on whichever one works for you and register for a ticket. And all the screenings are free of charge. Our in-person film festival at the Presidio Theater in San Francisco is completely free, as is our online encore screening, as are our satellite screenings with our different community partners. But it's great to, just register so that we can get a head count. Yeah, so please go to our website and register for these screenings. And I just want to do one last shout out to a local, filmmaker, Kim Ano, who is, based in San Francisco Bay Area. And we're very excited to be screening her film, Cuba, at our film festival on Saturdays. So yeah, she's going to be there. So please come join us.
Thank you. I just want to encourage people not only to go to this fabulous film festival, but if you're looking for an organization to support, I highly recommend QWOCMAP. I can't think of a more worthwhile and politically radical organization than this group. So really thank you, Kibo and Madeline, for joining me today, and hopefully I'll see you again before next year. And that was an interview with Kibo Drew and Madeline Lim of the San Francisco-based Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project, or QWOCMAP. And you can get more information about all of QWOCMAP's many films or trainings at QWOCMAP.org. That is spelled QWOCMAP.org. And next up, I talked to Judith Masser about the life of local, recently departed lesbian feminist disability activist Jill Lessing. Judith Masser, thanks for joining us. I know you were a good friend of Jill Lessing, who died in May 2026 at the age of 83 from complications of heart failure and pneumonia. And she was a lesbian feminist disability rights activist. Maybe you could talk a little bit about her. What was so important about her to the community and to you?
All right. Well, I first met Jill in the late 70s, and I met her in the context of just the lesbian community, but also in the context of disability, because my partner, Jessica Barche, was also disabled in different ways. And they were coalescing around that. They were entering together a group led by Ricky Bowden that focused on lesbians who were dealing with disabilities of various types. And I knew many of the women in that group. At that time, her disability stemmed from early onset polio. She was just a toddler when she came down with polio. And then in her teen years, she was in an auto accident that further disabled her. So she walked at that time using 2 canes. By the time she died, she was using a wheelchair. She was using the canes because polio, which strikes tremendously hard at the beginning, relents, but then it comes back. She had what's called post-polio syndrome, which was increasingly burdensome for her and left her dealing with a lot of pain. However, having said that, I want to say that this was a person who really made an impact in the lesbian community. She was instrumental she wasn't the originator, but she was instrumental in creating groups for lesbians living with disability. She was a therapist, and in that role, she led those groups, and groups that went on for decades, really. She also, together with Laura Rifkin, was the originator of a whole method and MO for making it possible for people with disabilities, including people with size disability who needed accommodation in terms of seating and hearing disabilities, many disabilities, possible for people to attend and enjoy such large public events as the Gay Pride Parade. They first organized seating and also food and water and shelter to make this access possible. And they had an impact on the public, the greater public in access.
In 2007, Jill and Laura co-created the fabled ASP, as Fabulous Activist Bay Area Lesbians with Disability, a storytelling project. Can you explain why that was important, and also maybe generally how feminists, and particularly lesbian feminists, were so at the forefront of creating disability access at events?
Well, lesbians have been involved in the disability activism from the beginning. The fight for the Americans with Disabilities Act, bringing in signing, and that was another thing they brought into the Gay Pride Parade, was the signing. In the world, lesbians to call them a footnote is even exaggerating, because we're very understudied, underrepresented, and underappreciated. Our activism, which stems from our lived reality and also from the principles of feminism, is long and deep. The homophobia at first kept us underground, but after that was challenged and dealt with, there's been more and more lesbian presence, and Jill has been part of that, had been part of that. She was a person who inspired other people. She had a strong, open, loving aspect. She also was very fiery and had a big temper, but at the same time, her ability to gather people, to activate people, and to inspire people to do more, to do what they could do to help others, was very notable to me. She was an artist, and she brought her sense of beauty into everything that she touched, including how she dressed. She was butch, and she was proud of that. She represented that in so many ways. Within the lesbian community, the disabled community is even more invisible. Lesbians with motor disabilities are visible. They're visible at parades, they're visible at events. There's accommodation now for different needs. But that has all been fought for by people, including and led by Jill. The Threshold Choir is another organization that Jill and her wife, Sharon Lloyd, were instrumental in forming. It's a group of women who sing to people who are very ill and dying. That's why the Threshold. And it's another example of their understanding the importance of supporting each other at moments of transition and moments of great stress. And this was central to Jill's contribution in the world.
That's it for today's show. I am Lisa Dettmer, and I've been your host today. You can get more information about our guests or hear our show again on KPFA's website at kpfa.org and search for Women's Magazine's archive. And we will go out with the song "We Won't Go Back," a sentiment we all need to believe in and fight for as the times get even more dire. As my former co-producer Kate Raphael used to say, stay strong, stay safe, and stay in the streets. And listen in next week for more feminist voices here on KPFA's Women's Magazine.
We won't go back! 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 My body is the revolution. What I do should be my own choosing. We won't go back. We won't. We won't. We won't. We won't go back. We won't go back. We honor those who fought before us. They give us strength as we push forward. We won't go back. We won't. We won't. We won't. We won't go back. We won't go back. Hey! We are the voices. We are the truth. So we make the future. Hey! We are the voices. We are the truth. We won't go back. We won't. 'Cause we make the future. Your good old days are an illusion. Nothing you do can stop the movement. We won't go back. We won't. We won't. We won't. We won't go back. We won't go back. I am human. I am sacred. More than a vessel of your making. We won't go back. We won't. We won't. We won't. We won't go back. We won't go back. Hey! We are the voices. We are the truth. So we make the future. Hey! We are the voices. We are the truth. We won't go back. We won't. 'Cause we make the future. When they said they were bringing greatness, they were bringing horror. When they said they were bringing civilization and democracy, they were bringing domination and brutal colonization. When they said they were bringing freedom, they were bringing warehousing units and prisons. The truth is that they are bringing fascism. History is shaped by our actions. It is shaped by us choosing to fight together even when it is hard. History is ours to write. History is ours to shape. So the question is, are we going to do that? The question is, are you going to join us?
KPFA, Sounds of Resistance since 1949.
So someone in 1949 was like, yeah, here's the idea. We'll build a radio station, broadcast actual truth, invite activists, artists, and thinkers to speak freely, and the public will just chip in to keep it going. Oh, and no commercials. Ever. Seriously, that was the plan. Fast forward more than 75 years later. Yup, we're still here. Still powered by listeners. Still not for sale. KPFA. A fresh signal in a dial full of static.
If following the corporate media narratives is cool, then we've been outcasts since 1949. This is 94.1 KPFA and 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, and online everywhere at kpfa.org.